Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar from the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors. Today's webinar is called the LPCC in California, Which Path Should I Take? And this is being recorded in the fall of 2011. This is a recorded presentation. There is no live participation, and this is just here to give you more information about which path you should take in applying for the LPCC in California. And let's take a minute to share with you who's here on this presentation. We have Dean Porter, Executive Director of the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors. Dean is a national certified career counselor, and she'll be speaking at the beginning about the path to licensure. And that's Dean on the bottom left. We also have Leah Brew, who is our current president of the organization. Leah is a counselor educator at Cal State Fullerton, and she will be discussing the application packets, and that's Leah in the middle. And I'm Sarah Kremer. I am current marketing and communications chair for the organization, and I am a board certified art therapist, and I'm on the bottom right. So welcome, Dean and Leah.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, and without further ado, let's jump right into the presentation. And Dean, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
All right. It's very exciting that after our 10-year quest for counselor licensure in California, the application packets are available and counselors are making decisions about which path to take and which application packet to use. The information that we are presenting today is based on our understanding of the LPCC law, having been involved in the writing of it, and from our conversations with the Board of Behavioral Sciences. But the board has the duty to implement the law and to be sure that LPCCs are well qualified, so the board will make all decisions about the license. Now, which path to take to the LPCC? Until December 31st, there are two paths to consider. The grandparenting path is available for a brief period of time for those who qualify, and the traditional path will remain once grandparenting is over. But it can be taken now by those who choose it. So let's look at the differences between the paths. The grandparenting path is for counselors not already licensed by the California Board of Behavioral Sciences who have 2 years post-degree counseling experience and 1,700 hours of supervised experience. It can include counselors who are licensed out of state and licensed marriage family therapists and licensed clinical social workers who are currently licensed in California. The traditional path can be used by counselors who cannot meet the grandparenting timeline, including recent graduates. And it can include counselors licensed out of state. Grandparenting applicants must apply by December 31st, 2011. Then the board will issue registration for all exams, except for the rehabilitation exam, along with the letter of deficiencies. Then applicants will have 12 months after receipt of the deficiency letter from the BBS to complete their 2 years of counseling experience, any supervised hours that are uncompleted, and any exams that need to still be taken. Then at the end of that 12-month period, if deficiencies are not remediated, the application is closed. Whereas the traditional path is an ongoing path, and so there is no deadline to apply. And here is the sequence of steps for the traditional path. First, an applicant must complete the education requirements and then register as an intern to complete the supervised hours. Now, applicants for internship can take a year to complete all the education deficiencies after their letter from the board, but they must complete all education before a registration number can be assigned. Then the intern has a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 6 years to complete the 3,000 supervised hours. The LPCC Law and Ethics exam is to be taken during the first year of internship. And then the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor's exam is taken when the supervised hours are completed. And an exam must be attempted at least once a year until all exams have been passed. So this process can take several years. Now, counselors licensed in other states who have already met these requirements can complete these steps much quicker. The education requirements are the same for both paths in that they require a 48-unit master's or doctoral degree that includes 6 units of practicum or fieldwork and the 9 core content areas. Now, the degree must include 7 of the 9 content areas, and 2 can be completed post-degree. Now, for the grandparenting path, there are concessions to the pre-1996 degrees, where those applicants can complete up to 3 courses of the core courses post-degree, and up to 18 units can be added to these earlier degrees. So that's a difference that the traditional path will not have. However, the traditional path does allow those with out-of-state degrees whose education is substantially equivalent to the degrees issued in California. They may be able to add more core courses and units post-degree at the discretion of the board than those who complete their degrees in California. So there is some flexibility there in the traditional path, but you cannot mix requirements from one path to the other. You're either on the grandparenting path or you're on the traditional path. And some people need to make a choice between those 2 paths. Now, those on the traditional path have 12 months to complete just the education requirements, whereas those on the grandparenting path have just 12 months after their letter from the BBS to complete all education, supervision, and examination requirements. So there's quite a difference in the timing between those 2 paths. Supervision is probably the biggest difference between the 2 paths. For the grandparenting path requires 2 years of post-degree counseling experience and 1,700 hours of supervised experience. And the board will not oversee the supervised practice, so there are very few specifications. And also, a certified or a registered counselor or therapist may be the supervisor during the grandparenting period only. For the traditional path, all of the specifications in the LPCC law take effect. And the requirement is 3,000 hours post-degree supervised experience as a professional clinical counselor intern to be known as a PCCI, registered with the Board of Behavioral Sciences. Now, those who have any supervision outside of California can still complete their supervised hours within California, but they must have 3,000 hours of substantially equivalent post-degree supervised experience. So counselors from out of state who are not licensed can apply to be a PCCI to complete those 3,000 hours. Licensed counselors from other states may need to add hours as a PCC intern registered with the BBS, so they can add hours to come up to the 3,000 hours. And then counselors who have been licensed for fewer than 2 years must add 250 hours as registered as a PCC intern with the BBS to have those 250 hours supervised experience in California. So there are quite a few differences when it comes to the supervision requirement between the two paths. Examinations. For the grandparenting path, 3 exams are required and must be passed by the end of those 12 months that are allowed to make up deficiencies. The board will issue registration forms for all of the exams except for the rehab exam, and this will come with the letter of deficiencies. And so the grandparenting exams are the LPCC Law and Ethics exam, either the National Counselor exam or the Certified Rehabilitation Counselor exam, and the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor exam. Now, a very recent development is that the National Board for Certified Counselors will automatically send exam scores for the clinical exam directly to the Board of Behavioral Sciences, unless a person has already passed that exam and already has the score verification certificate, in which case he or she would simply enclose it with the application. For the NCE, the NBCC will not automatically forward the score verification, and so it will be up to the applicant to forward that score verification certificate directly to the board. You see, a computer program has been set up for the ongoing testing process so that the BBS will have a list of counselors who are approved to take the clinical exam, which is the ongoing licensure exam, and then the NBCC will have that list. The counselor will take the exam with the NBCC, and then NBCC will automatically send the score directly to the BBS. So that's why it's a little different than these other exams. Now, examinations for the traditional path are also the Law and Ethics exam, which is taken during the first year of internship, and the clinical exam is taken at the end of the internship, and applicants must attempt an exam once a year until all exams are completed, and so those on the traditional path have much longer to pass the exams. Now, this is a side-by-side comparison of the differences between the paths. For the grandparenting path, applicants must apply by December 31st, 2011. Then they will have 12 months following their letter from the BBS to complete all requirements. Whereas for the traditional path, there is no application deadline, and the applicant has several years to complete all of the requirements. The education requirement of the 48-unit degree with the 6 units of practicum, 7 of the 9 core areas within the degree is the same for both paths. Also, the fact that all 9 core areas must be completed before the license can be issued, as well as the additional continuing education hours and the psychopharmacology course, which is a 2-unit university course. All of this must be completed before the license can be issued if it's the grandparenting path, and before the intern registration number can be issued if it's the traditional path. Now, there are a couple of concessions, do you recall, under the grandparenting for those with the pre-1996 degrees and counselor educators who may be credited for a core course they may have taught but that is not on their transcript. Whereas concessions in the traditional path are made for out-of-state degrees where at the discretion of the board additional units and core areas may be taken post-degree, which is not the case for those with the in-state degrees. The supervision difference is that for grandparenting, only 1,700 hours of supervised practice is required. The BBS will not oversee this practice, this supervision, very few specifications, and the supervisor could be a nationally certified or registered counselor or therapist. Whereas supervision in the traditional path must be 3,000 post-degree hours over a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 6 years. Registered with the BBS as a PCC intern, very detailed specifications for how to achieve that supervision, and the supervisor must be licensed and approved by the Board of Behavioral Sciences. As far as the differences between the exam requirement, there are 3 exams required for the grandparenting path. So there's really a trade-off between fewer supervised hours but an additional exam. Perhaps the saving grace is that many counselors have already taken the NCE or the CRCE if they've been certified all these years. Whereas for the traditional path, there are just 2 exams, the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor exam and the LPCC Law and Ethics exam. How about recent graduates? Can they qualify for grandparenting? Well, grandparenting is really designed for those with at least 2 years counseling experience, perhaps some supervised experience, and perhaps at least one of the exams already having been passed. However, we do think that May, June 2010 graduates may be able to get those 2 years post-degree counseling experience by utilizing those 12 additional months after their BBS evaluation. For example, if the degree is dated May, June 2010, and full-time counseling experience began July 2010, and the counselor applies for grandparenting before December 31st, 2011, the BBS evaluation with that letter of deficiency comes back maybe February 2012, indicating a deficiency of that 2nd year's experience, which is required for grandparenting. The counselor now has until February 2013 to complete that 2nd year of experience, as well as any of the 1,700 hours of supervision, any coursework like the continuing education and psychopharmacology perhaps, and all 3 exams that are required for grandparenting. So we think it is possible for a May-June graduate to pull it all together. But graduates after May-June 2010, like the 2011 graduates, will need to register as a professional clinical counselor intern to earn 2 years, 3,000 hours of supervised experience with the BBS oversight. Well, now hopefully you have an idea of which path to choose. So let's ask our president, Leah Brew, who is in the process of completing her application. Does it matter which application an applicant chooses? Leah?
Yes, it does matter because every packet is different. So we're going to talk about two different categories of packets. One is the grandparenting packet and the other is the traditional path packet. Within the grandparenting packet, you can choose between the LMFT or LCSW grandparenting path, which means that you already hold a license by the Board of Behavioral Sciences, which does not include psychologists, for example, or you can take the non-BBS licensed application grandparenting path. Within the traditional path, there are two categories. One is for in-state individuals and one is for out-of-state individuals. And you have intern registration and exam eligibility for each of the in-state and out-state paths. So let's start with the first packet, application packet 1A, grandparenting path for BBS licensed LMFTs and LCSWs. Because this is grandparenting, it's due by December 31st, and it assumes that someone already holds either the LMFT or the LCSW license in California. And again, it has to be completed by December 31st, so that license has to be held before December 31st. In contrast, application 1B, grandparenting path for non-BBS licensed applicants, assumes that you do not hold a BBS license by December 31st. So this could be for someone who's not licensed anywhere, who's licensed in out of California, or who might be a clinical licensed as a psychologist. The requirements are the same for in-state or out-of-state degrees, for in-state or out-of-state post-degree supervised experience, or for licensed counselors in other states or unlicensed counselors who are currently in California. The next packet, application 2A, is the traditional path for in-state individuals. This is the one that doesn't have a due date, as Dean discussed, because this is the ongoing process that will happen after December 31st. So this applies to those with no supervised experience or licensure in another state. There's no due date. There are two types of application packets. One for intern registration, which assumes all education requirements have already been met, and it applies to those who will complete all post-degree supervised experience in California. And the other application packet is exam eligibility, which assumes that all education and supervised experience is complete and that supervised experience was gained in California. Finally, application packet 2B, the traditional path for out-of-state individuals, again has no due date, and the same categories apply here as 2A. Intern registration packet, which assumes all education requirements have been met, and it applies to counselors who need to complete supervised experience. And it applies to counselors licensed in another state for fewer than 2 years who would need that additional 250 supervised hours in California. And then the exam eligibility, which assumes all education and supervised experience is complete, and it applies to counselors licensed in other states for at least 2 years who meet all education and experience requirements. So as you can see, for 2A and 2B, the traditional path, one is where you have your experience in state, and the other is where you really have your experience and education out of state, or either one out of state. So one of the things that I thought might be interesting for you that was a little bit of a surprise for me are the fees. So my question was, what fees might I incur in this process? First of all, the application with the BBS for non-BBS licensed applicants is $280. And that $280 pays for the $180 application fee and the $100 law and ethics exam. The fee is the same, $280 for LCSWs and LMFTs for the grandparenting path, but that includes the GAP exam as well. The national exams include the NBCC exam. So for grandparenting, you will need to take either the CRCE, which you'll need to go to their website to find out the cost on that. I don't have that information. Or you'll have to take the National Counselor exam, which is $185. And you'll need to take the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor exam, which is $185. And again, the scores are sent automatically to the BBS on that exam. Now, if you've already taken both of those exams, like fortunately I already had those, you can pay $20 to the NBCC, and they will forward those. They can forward you the results of those exams in a sealed envelope for you to submit with your packet. Okay. So additional fees that are minor, live scan photo, or live scan cost me about $60 for that fingerprinting process. I paid $12 for a passport photo. To order an official unopened transcripts, it cost me $4 at Cal State Fullerton. At the University of North Texas, they charged me $10. And I'm licensed in Texas, and it cost me $10 to get the verification of licensure in another state application completed from their board. Fees for the traditional path are a little bit different. If you're coming on as an intern, as many people will be, it's $100 for the first year and $100 for annual intern renewal. So if you're graduating in 2012, for example, in the first year you'll pay $100, and you have a minimum of 2 years, so that's at least $200. But if it takes you 3, then that'll be $300 altogether. The exam eligibility application is $280, which includes the $180 application fee and the $100 for the law and ethics exam. And then the clinical mental health exam is $185. After you have submitted your application and completed all your experience and taken all your exams, then you pay $200 for the initial license and a biennial, every other year, renewal fee of $175. So it's rather expensive to get started on this, but I'm sure it's a good investment. So what can we expect from the grandparenting process? Again, we want to repeat, the applications for grandparenting are due to the Board of Behavioral Sciences by December 31st. And once you have received your letter from the BBS, you'll have 1 year to remediate any graduate units that are allowed post-degree, any continuing education hours required for licensure, the completion of any of the 3 exams, or if you're missing some piece of your application materials, that can be submitted, and your post-degree hours, 2 years post-degree counseling experience with at least 1,700 post-degree supervised hours that might not yet be completed. Applications are available on the BBS website. So you can go to the URL there, bbs.ca.gov. The BBS asks that you do not call them to see if they have received your application. You can instead include a self-addressed stamped envelope or postcard, which the BBS will return to you when they've received your application, and you can check to see when your check has been cashed, and in that way you'll know they received your application. You'll want to apply in sufficient time. You don't want to send out your application on December 15th because you want to give the BBS enough time to review it and make sure that you used the correct application. Because you can't mix and match forms between applications. It's critical that you use the correct application form, And if any errors are found, you may not have time to remediate them, because if there is some remediation with the actual application and it happens after December 31st, the grandparenting period is then over. And you want to make sure that you have all your materials done early, and take into consideration they're probably going to be off during the holidays and during Thanksgiving as well. And I do want to repeat here that it's up to the BBS to determine if you meet the requirements. This webinar is based on our understanding of how things work, but it ultimately is the say of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. So, Dean?
Yes, this concludes our presentation. These PowerPoint slides can be downloaded from our members only page. And the slides are not moving ahead here, so let's see what we can do. There we go. The CalPCC website has more information on the requirements and the applications, as well as links to the various applications on the BBS website. If you're not already a member, we hope you will join our association, for in addition to the website, we offer email member updates, individual consultation by email or by phone, and a members forum where counselors can connect with each other. Sarah, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dean, and thank you, Leah, for informing potential future counselors on the correct path to take. And this concludes our recorded webinar. We hope this presentation has been very helpful for you, and we look forward to keeping our members updated in the future. Please make sure to log on to our website, calpcc.org, for more information in the coming months. Thank you again.